Good day everyone. Today we are going to discuss about pedagogical principles and approaches, cognitive stages. So let's define first what is cognition. Cognition is a term referring to the mental processes involved in gaining knowledge and comprehension. Some of the many different cognitive processes include thinking, knowing, remembering, judging, and problem solving. We have two theories on the cognitive stages of development, the theory of Jean Piaget and the theory of Lev Vygotsky. Let's first discuss about Jean Piaget. Jean Piaget was a Swiss psychologist and genetic epistemologist. Piaget was born in Switzerland in the late 1800s and was a precocious student, publishing his first scientific paper when he was just 11 years old. He is most famously known for his theory of cognitive development that look at how children develop intellectually throughout the course of childhood. Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development stages. Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development suggests that children move through four different stages of mental development. His theory focuses not only on understanding how children acquire knowledge, but also on understanding the nature of intelligence. So now, let's have Piaget's four stages of cognitive development. We have the sensory motor stage, pre-operational stage, concrete operational stage, and formal operational stage. The sensory motor stage ages birth to 2 years. The infant knows the world through their movements and sensations. Children learn about the world through basic actions such as sucking, grasping, looking, and listening. Infants learn that things continue to exist even though they cannot be seen. Object permanence. They are separate beings from the people and objects around them, and they realize that their actions can cause things to happen in the world around them. During this earliest stage of cognitive development, infants and toddlers acquire knowledge through sensory experiences and manipulating objects. A child's entire experience at the earliest period of this stage occurs through basic reflexes, senses, and motor responses. It is during the sensory-motor stage that children go through a period of dramatic growth and learning. As kids interact with their environment, they are continually making new discoveries about how the world works. Piaget believed that developing object permanence or object constancy, the understanding that objects continue to exist even when they cannot be seen, was an important element at this point of development. By learning that objects are separate and distinct entities and that they have an existence of their own outside of individual perception, children are then able to begin to attach names and words to objects. The pre-operational stage ages 2 to 7 years. Children begin to think symbolically and learn to use words and pictures to represent objects. Children at this stage tend to be egocentric and struggle to see things from the perspective of others. And while they are getting better with language and thinking, they still tend to think about things in very concrete terms. At this stage, Kids learn through pretend play but still struggle with logic and taking the point of view of other people. They also often struggle with understanding the idea of constancy. For example, a researcher might take a lump of clay, divide it into two equal pieces, and then give a child the choice between two pieces of clay to play with. One piece of clay is rolled into a compact ball, while the other is smashed into a flat pancake shape. Since the flat shape looks larger, the pre-operational child will likely choose that piece even though the two pieces are exactly the same size. The concrete operational stages, ages 7 to 11 years. During this stage, children begin to thinking logically about concrete events. They begin to understand the concept of conservation, that the amount of liquid in a short, wide cup is equal to that in a tall, skinny glass, for example. Their thinking becomes more logical and organized, but still very concrete. Children begin using inductive logic or reasoning from specific information to a general principle. While thinking becomes much more logical during the concrete operational state, it can also be very rigid. Kids at this point in development tend to struggle with abstract and hypothetical concepts. During this stage, children also become less egocentric and begin to think about how other people might think and feel. Kids in the concrete operational stage also begin to understand that their thoughts are unique to them and that not everyone else necessarily shares their thoughts, feelings, and opinions. The formal operational stage, ages 12 and up. At this stage, the adolescent or young adult begins to think abstractly and reason about hypothetical problems. Abstract thought emerges. Teens begins to think more about moral, philosophical, ethical, social, and political issues that require theoretical and abstract reasoning. Begin to use deductive logic or reasoning from a general principle to specific information. The final stage of Piaget's theory involves an increase in logic, the ability to use deductive reasoning, and an understanding of abstract ideas. At this point, people become capable of seeing multiple potential solutions to problems and think more scientifically about the world around them. The ability to thinking about abstract ideas and situations is the key hallmark of the formal operational stage of cognitive development. The ability to systematically plan for the future and reason about hypothetical situations are also critical abilities that emerge during this stage. Let's move to important concepts of Piaget's theory of cognitive development. We have schemas. A schema describes both the mental and physical actions involved in understanding and knowing. Schemas are categories of knowledge that help us to interpret and understand the world. In Piaget's view, a schema includes both a category of knowledge and the process of obtaining that knowledge. As experiences happen, this new information is used to modify, add to, or change previously existing schemas. For example, a child may have a schema about a type of animal, such as a dog. If the child's sole experience has been with small dogs, a child might believe that all dogs are small, furry, and have four legs. Suppose then that the child encounters an enormous dog. The child will take in this new information, modifying the previously existing schema to include these new observations. Assimilation. The process of taking in new information into our already existing schemas is known as assimilation. The process is somewhat subjective because we tend to modify experiences and information slightly to fit in with our pre existing beliefs. Accommodation. Another part of adaptation involves changing or altering our existing schemas in light of new information, a process known as accommodation. Accommodation involves modifying existing schemas or ideas as a result of new information or new experiences. New schemas may also be developed during this process. Equilibration. Piaget believed that all children try to strike a balance between assimilation and accommodation, which is achieved through a mechanism Piaget called equilibration. As children progress through the stages of cognitive development, it is important to maintain a balance between applying previous knowledge or assimilation and changing behavior to account for new knowledge or accommodation. Equilibration helps explain how children can move from one stage of thought to the next. Piaget's theory of cognitive development helped add to our understanding of children's intellectual growth. It also stressed that children were not merely passive recipients of knowledge. Instead, kids are constantly investigating and experimenting as they build their understanding of how the world works. In this time, let's go to Lev Vygotsky. Lev Vygotsky is a Russian psychologist. He believed that child development is the result of interactions between children and their social environment. He developed the zone of proximal developed a sociocultural approach to cognitive development. He is the leader in the development of social constructivism, but his work was not published until after his death in the 1960s. He rejected Piaget's assumption that it is possible to separate learning from its social context, and he viewed language as most important psychological tool. Lev Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development. Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development proposes that cognitive abilities such as learning and problem solving are developed through social interaction with others during childhood. According to Vygotsky, culture and environment play a large role in cognitive development. He believes social interactions with others help a child to learn and develop. Vygotsky's theory is made up of several components which explain cognitive development. These components are zone of proximal development, inner speech and scaffolding. Zone of proximal development. It's when a child is able to solve some problems by themselves but might need extra guidance from a responsible person who can solve the problem. The person helping the child to learn initially takes responsibility in helping them to do so, but gradually shifts this responsibility over to the child. Once a child masters a task, the responsible adult can figure out the next zone of proximal development to continue to help the child learning. If a child can't master a task even with assistance from an adult, then the task is not yet within the child's zone of proximal development, and the level of learning difficulty should be reduced. Not helping a child to learn or helping too much can interfere with cognitive development. Example: a child being shown how to ride a bike without stabilizers with guidance from a responsible adult. The child may already have the developmental abilities to be able to ride a bike without stabilizers. However, to learn this skill, they require social interaction and guidance. Inner speech. Inner speech develops as beliefs and concepts are processed internally. According to the theory, children acquire knowledge from their environment, which teaches them how to think. Children are taught to develop inner speech and use this to help them to solve problems. Vygotsky also referred to this as internalization. It is an important force in cognitive development. For those who have developed their inner speech, this is used on a regular daily basis to help solve problems, reason, and more. Example: a young child may speak their thoughts out loud, but as they grow, they are able to internalize their thoughts. And lastly, scaffolding. Scaffolding was not a term originally proposed by Vygotsky, but by other theorists who expanded on his work. Scaffolding is the activities provided by the adult or teacher to help a child master a task in the zone of proximal development. As a person builds knowledge, internalizes it, and confidence increases, the level of external support is gradually reduced. Example: driving independently after passing your driving test and gradually no longer needing the presence of a driving instructor or another person to support you while driving. Let's take a look at the overview of Piaget and Vygotsky ideas. Piaget and Vygotsky both were constructivists, and both believed that social forces set the limits of development. In Piaget ideas, it has four discrete stages. Cognitive development is limited by stages. Young children are schematic. Motivation to maintain cognitive equilibrium. And development occurs when assimilation is not possible. In Vygotsky ideas, it has continuous development or no stages, zone of proximal development, socially transmitted knowledge or cooperative learning and scaffolding, and private speech helps internalize knowledge.